What's good, everybody? It's the Clown with Cap Show. We got UFC 288, Aljamain Sterling, the current champion, versus Henry Cejudo. I think this is an amazing matchup. And we look at Henry Cejudo, a.k.a. Triple C, and say he might be one of the best athletes pound for pound we've ever seen in the fight game. I mean, he won the Gold Olympics in 2008 in Beijing. That's crazy to me. It's crazy to even imagine that he's won gold, Olympic gold in wrestling. It's amazing, dude. I mean, he was a former champion back in 2020. He retired a little early, I thought. He's in his mid to late 30s now. But, you know, looking back at it, he fought Dominic Cruz, beat him in 2020, then retired. He fought Demetrius Johnson, one of the best UFC fighters ever, back in 2018. He beat him and took the belt from Demetrius Johnson, even though Demetrius Johnson did beat him back in 2016 by KO. But, you know, looking at Henry, I mean, dude, I don't see how he doesn't win this fight against Sterling. I just don't. I mean, Sterling, yes, he's the current champion. He's 22-3. But I look at his last, 4 or 5 fights, and I'm thinking he did get lucky against Petr Yan in the first matchup, where Petr Yan threw the illegal knee, which he didn't even need to do that. And I think that really was a turning point in both of those fighters' careers. And we look at Sterling, he's the champion right now, well-deserved, but I do think this is a bad matchup for Sterling. I mean, Henry Cejudo, probably pound for pound the best wrestler in the UFC. Him, John Jones, Bo Nickel, guys like that. Chimaev, guys who could really wrestle at a high level. And I'm telling you what, just knowing how to wrestle in the fight game, you're automatically up one. Because, you know, looking at the UFC and MMA, you have to realize if you know how to wrestle, you can control the whole fight. You can put them up against the cage. You can take them down and just ground and pound them the whole time. So I think automatically knowing to be a wrestler is automatically ahead of the game. You know, whereas if you're a striker and you go into the UFC, well, you got a long way to go. I mean, you got to learn grappling. You got to learn wrestling. You got to learn jiu-jitsu. You got to learn all these Muay Thai. You got to learn different types of things, but especially for the ground game, you know, and I just think Henry, dude, he's going to take Sterling down, and he's just going to ground and pound him, or he might just beat him at his own game. But I do think if Aljamain Sterling wins this fight, it's going to be standing up and refusing to get taken down by Henry Cejudo. But I just don't see that happening. I think Henry Cejudo, it's going to be his game here. He's going to try to take him down, and he will take him down eventually. I mean, dude, he's won gold, Olympic gold medal. Like, dude, that is crazy. Olympic gold medal. That might be better than, the UFC belt, dude. I think it is absolutely better. I mean, you're fighting for your country here, and he won for the USA. So shout out to Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold champion, UFC champion, dude, Triple C. And he's Triple C because he's trying to go to win each division at 3 different weight classes. That is crazy, and I think it's possible. You know, he wants to fight Sterling, obviously, you know, this weekend. I think he's going to mop him up, and then he's going to fight, you know, Sugar Sean O'Malley. I think he probably might wipe him up, too, and then Volkanovski. You know, that'll be crazy if he goes through all 3 of those guys. You know, it'd be insane, but I don't doubt it. Why? Because he's an elite wrestler. That's why. You know, in the UFC, if you're an elite wrestler, you don't even really have to know how to box. You really don't. You just go for the takedowns, and eventually you will get them. Obviously, unless you're another wrestler and he knows what you're going to do, that's a little different story. But I just think Sterling isn't as high as grappler wrestler than Henry Cejudo. You know, that's the difference. But I think for Sterling here in this fight, this championship bantamweight fight, I think you got to keep this fight standing. If you're Sterling, you got to keep your distance, throw your leg kicks, you know, throw the jabs. But I'm not trying to underestimate Henry Cejudo's stand-up game. It's great. But I just think his bread and butter is the takedowns. That's what he's going to do in this fight. You know, I'd be surprised if he doesn't shoot for the takedown in the first 2 minutes of the opening round. I really wouldn't. I would not be surprised at all. That's what Henry does. But at the same time, he could just fill him out. You know, just stand up for the first couple rounds here and there. But it's a 5-round fight. But, you know, for me, Triple C, dude, if he really does this, like he comes back, he was the former champion, retired as a champion, and he comes back, beats Sterling, you know, beats Sugar Sean O'Malley, and then beats Volkanovski, dude, that'll be insane, dude. That'll be like GOAT status, you know, not to mention Demetrius Johnson, pound for pound, one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time. He beat him in 2018. So, the resume speaks for itself. Henry Cejudo's the real deal. To say he's, you know, Fugazi or whatever would be ignorant, dude. That is crazy. We knew he was a champion back in 2008 when he took home gold in the Olympics. That is crazy, dude. So, shout out to Henry Cejudo. Sterling, he's got a big fight. I mean, this is his toughest opponent. Absolutely, dude. This is the toughest guy he's ever fought. tougher than Pierre Yan because Pierre Yan wasn't a good wrestler. He was a good stand-up. Like that's the difference. Here, I think Henry, he does have a good stand-up game, but not as good as Aljamain Sterling at all. But I do think, to stay away from his overhand, stuff like that, because when we look at certain wrestlers in the UFC, we say, what do they have during their stand-up game? What's their most powerful tool? It's always the overhand right? Majority of the wrestlers always have a strong overhand right. I mean, we go back to the Khabib-McGregor fight, and we saw Khabib land that overhand right in the second round on McGregor, and it was just like, holy cow, McGregor almost fell down and finally got him down to the ground, but it's that overhand right from the wrestlers, dude. I'm telling you, don't underestimate that. So I think Henry Cejudo's going to do great. I think he's going to just take down Sterling and just, obliviate him. I really do. Even though Aljamain Sterling's the champion right now, but we're looking at Henry Cejudo here, okay? Dude, like Triple C's going for the Triple Crown, so I don't put it past him. So I'm going Henry Cejudo in this matchup. For the main event, I'll definitely do that. And then we got Gilbert Burns fighting yet again, probably one of the most active UFC fighters on the roster, fighting a guy named Belal Muhammad. I haven't really seen this guy fight. I understand he's on a big win streak here. He's 22-3, one no contest. And the one no contest was against Leon Edwards back in 2021, a couple years ago. And it looked like the fight was, Muhammad was losing the fight a little bit, but it was in the second round. And what do we know? Leon Scissorhands pokes the guy in the eye yet again, and he couldn't even fight. So it was no contest. So I do think if Muhammad beats Gilbert Burns, he deserves to fight Leon for the belt, or the winner of Colby Covington and Leon Edwards. This is the fight. This is the guys who's gonna have next to that title. So I think at the 170. So I think Muhammad, he deserves it. He's put in a lot of work. Even though that one no contest with Leon Edwards, that really wasn't his fight. And a lot of people say, oh, you were gonna lose that fight. That was the second round. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't just say that. Like, there's a lot more fight left. I mean, we go to the Leon Edwards-Nate Diaz fight. Leon Edwards was dominating the whole fight for about 23 minutes. In the last 2 minutes, what happened? Nate Diaz rocked Leon Edwards, and under a minute to go, and really should have knocked Leon Edwards out. So, in the fight game, you have to understand one mistake is all it takes, and then you're knocked out. That's it. Knocked out completely cold. One mistake. And we saw Leon Edwards make a mistake against Nate Diaz. Luckily for Nate Diaz, he wasn't really hungry to win. He was more hungry to win the fans over and win more money. So I think, for that aspect. But in this fight, Muhammad, he's got to, do something creative here. Like I said, I haven't really seen much of Belal Muhammad fight. I just haven't, dude. I just haven't seen him that much. I've been hearing a lot about him in the last 6 months in the UFC, but like I said, haven't really seen him in big fights. So I think this is his biggest fight yet against Gilbert Burns, where Gilbert Burns just recently beat Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal announced his retirement. What a career. But for Gilbert Burns, 22-5 in the UFC, I mean, he's on a streak right here. And Gilbert Burns is active. That's why I like Gilbert Burns, and I think if Gilbert Burns wins this fight, absolutely, he deserves a title shot at 170. I truly believe that. And Gilbert Burns, and he lost to the Chimaev fight, even though I think that fight could have went either way. Gilbert Burns put on a great fight. I think Gilbert Burns in the UFC and Dana White's really becoming a huge fan of Gilbert Burns because he steps up every single time. He doesn't care who he fights, what it is, if he's a wrestler or not a wrestler, doesn't matter. Gilbert Burns is ready for war no matter what. So that's what I like about Gilbert Burns, and I think Gilbert Burns can win this fight. I really do. Keep this fight standing. I don't think Gilbert Burns is going to shoot for any takedowns here. Now for Muhammad here, I would like to see some takedowns. Mix it up, maybe some leg kicks. But I haven't really seen that much of Muhammad, so I'm not going to dog Muhammad and say he sucks at this and that because I really don't know much. I saw a little of the Leon Edwards fight, but that wasn't enough to really get grasp and be like, oh, this guy's, all amazing at this and that. It was just one of those fights where it's just kind of back and forth, technical fight. But I think this fight right here is not going to be as technical as what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be more of a brawl. I think both these fighters are going to throw huge punches to knock each other out, whether it's Muhammad or Gilbert Burns. And we know Gilbert Burns has a crazy right hand, and we saw him against Chimaev fight where he rocked him late in the second round and really almost knocked Chimaev out, knocked him down on the ground. He got back up with the takedown, but it's crazy, dude. I mean, the UFC, it's amazing. It's the real deal, and that's why I'm kind of surprised they did some business with the WWE recently, where it's like WWE's fake fighting. UFC is the real deal. This is real fighting. They are really punching you in the face, whereas WWE, all that's scripted, dude. That's fake. So I was kind of surprised. I was caught off a little bit. Maybe it's just about making the money, but at the end of the day, it's like real versus fake here. Like, I want the real deal, and that's why the UFC does great business, because it is real. It's legit, dude. Like, it's as real as it gets, and I think it's the full combat. You know, just because you're a good wrestler doesn't mean you're going to win, whereas vice versa, if you're a good striker doesn't mean you're going to win. There's so many different ways to win in the UFC. And we look at the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Jon Jones. How does he win? He wins in different ways, not just by knockout or leg kicks like he did against Daniel Cormier. Like, he wins all different types of ways. From a takedown wrestle, he's going to submit you. So many different ways to beat you. And that was just an example of Jon Jones. But UFC, dude, it's iconic. It's amazing. And Dana White continues to build these big, big fights for the company, and it's amazing. And we're seeing a lot of fight people, a lot of celebrities loving the UFC now. I love it. I absolutely do. But, you know, for $1 million on this fight, I'd go Gilbert Burns. Why am I going to go Gilbert Burns? Because he's sharp right now. He's very active. So there is no rest here. So I think automatically from round one, we're going to see a lot more crispier shots from Gilbert Burns and Belal Muhammad. That's what I believe here. That's why I think fighting 3 or 4 times a year for UFC fighters is huge. Whereas if you're only fighting once or maybe twice a year as a UFC fighter, that's not enough. That really isn't. You know, your rhythm is off a little bit. You need to fight 3+ times a year, dude. I really believe that. I mean, Gilbert Burns, he can fight. You know, he just fought like a month and a half, 2 months ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, realistically 3 months, but still, like, it's crazy, dude. Like, that's why I love Gilbert Burns, and that's why I think Gilbert Burns, he wins this fight, no matter if it's decision, you know, knockout, whatever the win is. For Gilbert Burns, he deserves that next title shot. He deserves the winner of Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. So, you know, hats off to him. But I'm definitely going to go Gilbert Burns. I'll take that right now over Belal Muhammad. You know, good luck to both of them. But, you know, back to the main event fight. Sterling, Henry Cejudo, Triple C. I'm done. This is an amazing fight. I really do believe that. Even though it's, 135, they're kind of lightweights here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I walk around at 170, dude. Like, imagine me fighting a 170er right now. Like, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Leon Edwards. Like, dude, that would be crazy, dude. That is insane. But it makes sense why a lot of these UFC cats, they cut big weight here. And I've said it many times. I don't necessarily agree with cutting, you know, 20 to 30 pounds for a fight, dude. You're going to get knocked out easier. Your brain's dehydrated. You need water. You're starving yourself. You're weak. Like, it's not the same, dude. So I think people who realistically want to go deep in the fight game in the UFC industry, like, I feel like cutting less weight is going to be better for you in the long term, you know, for your career, to have a longer career. Whereas if you're cutting all this weight, 30 to 40 pounds, just for a title fight, dude, every time, like, it's going to catch up to you. And I don't think you're going to last as long in the UFC, to whereas we look at Jon Jones and say, wow, Jon Jones has been at light heavyweight for so long, right? 205 for many years, right? And then he finally jumped up to heavyweight, where he's eating all the time. And I think Jon Jones is going to dominate the whole heavyweight division, you know, unless I want to see Francis Ngannou come to negotiations, come back to the UFC, and I think that'd be great business, Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou in the UFC. Because right now, according to Dana White in the UFC, the heavyweight champion is Jon Jones, not Francis Ngannou. So there is no end still for Francis Ngannou. There is no end still. There is no end still. No, there is no. Dude, the current champion is Jon Jones. So I think if Francis Ngannou's hungry enough to come back and fight to go Jon Jones. Please do it. Do it for the UFC one time. But like I said, I got Henry Cejudo, Gilbert Burns in the 2-fight parlay at UFC 288. I think this is the smartest bet yet. You know, bet definitely Henry Cejudo. I mean, I'm telling you, Sterling, you know, he got really lucky in the first fight against Pierre Young to even win the championship. Then he did beat him the second time, which he caught some weaknesses from Pierre Young. But I think pound for pound right now, I think Sterling's going to get dog walked and he's going to lose this fight. I really do. So I like Henry Cejudo by victory, Gilbert Burns, and I'll take Jessica in the other fight. I like her over Jan. She's 16-3, but I like Jessica in that fight just because I've seen Jessica fight. I haven't seen the other girl fight. I have not, but I like Gilbert Burns, Henry Cejudo, UFC 288, baby. It's the Clown with Cam show. Let's go!